Hi guys, it's Nathan here from Headbangers. Today we've got Nick from Job for a Cowboy. Now, obviously, everyone's heard of Job for a Cowboy. They blew up as a deathcore band in the MySpace era. Now, a completely different band entirely. We're talking about their new album, Moon Healer. It's a continuation of Sun Eater. And yeah, it took years for them to make. It's an incredible album. We talk a lot about the psychedelic themes that went into that. A lot of Nick about how Nick sort of approaches bass writing, him as a bass player, and how he's developed his own style, and a lot more. This episode was really fun for us to film. So yeah, we hope you enjoy it. If you do like the podcast, don't forget to like and subscribe, and also don't forget to check us out on social media on everywhere. It's Headbangers Podcast, except for Twitter where it's Headbangers Pod One. But without any further ado, here's the episode.
Welcome to the Bangers Podcast, guys. I'm Brad, and this is Nathan. Today we're joined by Nick from Job for a Cowboy. How you doing, man? To start off with.
Cheers, man. Super good, man. Been a pretty incredibly busy, I guess even just life in general. Pretty busy life. But like specifically the last couple months have been like, ramping up for the release, and then music videos and doing all the press and that kind of stuff, and then trying to keep rent paid through all that. So it's been busy, but I'm grateful for it and happy to be talking to you guys, man.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to have you on.
Hell yeah.
We want to start off with a little icebreaker that we always do. What's your funniest gig or tour story? I know you're a man that's in many bands, so like I'm sure you've got a few to ramp up, so let's go.
Sure. Let's see. Funniest one. Oh man, I'm like perusing through the carousel of memories in my head. I would say one time, I don't know if this was funny, but one that sticks out in my head is we were on tour with Hate Eternal. It was Hate Eternal, Fall of Carnage, and Skeleton Witch. And it was Skeleton Witch's first tour in Europe ever. And we were all on a bus together. And the second to last show, we played London, and it was awesome. And then we stopped on the way out. Just the way the routing was working, we were able to stop at Big Ben. And so everybody got out, took some pictures. Just we were all drunk and having a good time or whatever. And I was going to call my girlfriend. And so I went over to one of the red phone booth, jammers that they got there. And then I told Zach, my guitarist from Symbolic, I was like, hey, don't leave. I'm on the phone. I'm calling Alicia. And he's like, oh, yeah, I got it. Cool, man. So they all get on the bus and start watching South Park or whatever. And I'm talking to my girlfriend. I'm probably like 2 minutes into the call or something, 3 minutes into the call. And I see the bus start to drive away. And I was like, what the fuck? So I just was like, babe, I got to go. And then I just started running to try to catch the bus. But I was not able to catch the bus. And so I got left at Big Ben. And it was probably one of the most resourceful times that I had to utilize your survival skills, modern day survival skills, not making fires or camping or anything, but figuring out how can you, luckily, two things that I had on me. So I had the calling card. I magically had a credit card. Like that's just crazy magical that I had that in my pocket, because normally it would have just been the calling card. I'm just going out to make a phone call and coming back on the bus. And I was in my like gym shorts and stuff. And I had, no, I did not have my tour pass because that would have made it really easy. Okay. So all I had was a credit card and a calling card. Calling card runs out of minutes. As I call my girlfriend back and I'm like, they just left me. And then the calling card's out of minutes. And I'm like, oh shit. So I had to figure out how to recharge the card. This is, before you would have a cell phone that would work anywhere else. This is like 2008. So I had to figure out how to recharge the card, which took, I don't know, 30 minutes, like going through their operating system, getting somebody on the phone and be like, I need to recharge this exact card. I can't get a new one shipped. So I got that recharged. And then I had to remember the phone numbers because my girlfriend was at work and she couldn't help. And so I had to remember the phone numbers of whoever I could that would be awake, that I could give my password to Gmail for, that they could search through my Gmail and hopefully the tour book was in there, which would have the TM or the bus driver's phone number in. So that took about an hour and a half. I finally got a hold of my cousin who had his wife do it. And then once I finally got the phone number and then had to be like borrowing a pen to be able to write the number down because I didn't have, So then finally I called the TM and I was like, hey, how's it going? And he's like, it's this guy, Jeroen J, real infamous, awesome tour manager buddy from Holland. And he's like, well, what are you in your bunk? And I was like, no, I'm at fucking Big Ben, dude. And so he's like, oh shit. So he goes to the driver and the driver's like, in the European Union, right? You have these like, well, I think that stuff's been adopted to the States as well, but you have these like logs, right? There's like a little kind of black box, if you will, that, tells how long that driver's been driving. And they can only drive X amount of hours per week. And they're like, if we turn around to come pick you back up and then turn around and drive back on our way to Belgium, it will put him over his limit and the entire tour will not be able to go to the next show. And so I was like, fuck, feel it. So they're like, you got to take you got to find somebody to drive you. And they were already 2 hours outside of London at that point. And so I fucking had to go around and just stop taxi drivers and be like, hey, I'm really sorry, this is weird, but can you drive me like 2 hours out? And none of them would do it because they're like, I'm not going to get paid for the 2 hour drive back or the gas back. Finally, one guy does, and he's super cool. He's like, yeah, man, I'll do it. This really cool British bloke. And he ended up being Amy Winehouse's uncle. And so he told me like this whole story. And this was before she had passed. And so he was like, oh yeah. He's like, oh, that's cool. I'm a musician, musician family. Like my niece is Amy Winehouse. And I was like, no shit. And he's like, yeah, we're all kind of like worried about her, like there was like a precursor to, yeah. So 250 pounds for the cab ride. And back then it was 2 to 1. So it was about a $500 fucking cab ride to catch up with the bus. So I don't know how funny it was, but that's one of my
that's
crazier...
a fucking story, man. Jesus Christ. Is that like it could be like a movie plot that?
Yeah, actually it'd be a good episode, like Curb Your Enthusiasm or something.
I know. I mean, to be fair, at least you got to have an interesting conversation with the taxi driver. I mean, like, usually it's about like the weather or like, how busy the day has been, but that's definitely a unique one.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. I'll never forget that whole experience. And like there's a thing that like when you're on a, on tour or whatever, I think this is, back from like naval times or whatever, they would kind of do like a roll call and, the TM or whoever, captain or whoever would say, are we a boat? Meaning do we have everybody on board? Are we fully accounted for? And somebody forgot to say it that night. So like when I woke up in the morning, I put, before I went to bed, because it was like 4, 5 in the morning once I finally got in there and got able to get to go to sleep in my bunk. So I just put a big sign, my little passive aggressive fuck you to everybody was like, just in big bold letters, are we a boat? Put it on the thing.
I originally thought it were going to turn out like, I was like, oh, so luckily we're playing in London. I just managed to find the venue, and it would like turn up like, you fuckers. But that's all right. That is a way like more stressful situation that I thought it would have ended up.
Yeah, that was crazy. Yeah, I'm trying to think if I've ever been left again. No, that was pretty much it, I think. But I mean, I have heard of that other people that way, but not like that hardcore. It'd be like, oh, maybe we left you at the gas station like 20 minutes back, and somebody calls on their cell phone. It's like, wait, did you guys leave? But that was like, I mean, if I didn't have that credit card, I have no fucking idea. I would have just been in London, for however long till I could get somebody to wire me money and then I guess get a whole new plane ticket home. But I didn't have my passport and I didn't have shit. I was in gym shorts, so it'd have been like pretty much just would have been probably still there today, homeless person in London, And
that's absolutely insane. But yeah, well, I'm glad that you eventually got you found your way back to the tour bus. But yeah, I want to get into obviously, Moon Healers come out. How does it feel to like come back after all this time? Like, does it feel differently making music now than it did back then? Because that's like a big gap. Obviously, I know you're in other bands as well, but for Job for Cowboy specifically, how was that transition?
Yeah, that's kind of because I've been in other bands. Um, it's way less than I'm sure what it feels like for everybody else in the band. Um, I mean, Naveen, he's a session guy, but he's such a close friend that we're like, you're a session guy, but you're also our we're trying to get him to do more with the band, like, and he's down to play shows and stuff too. So us two aside, for them, I'm sure it's kind of like crazy because it is a different landscape, but at the same time, like how we did it was kind of similar to how we did Sun Eater. Sun Eater was written like way more in a room together. The two guitarists, Al and Tony, for Sun Eater would like jam back and forth because they lived in Boston at the time, close to each other where they could, meet up a few times a week and go over the riffs and structure the songs and that kind of stuff. So this time around, everybody lives very far away. So, Al's in the middle of bumfuck Egypt, New Hampshire, and Johnny is the only remaining person in Arizona. I'm in Colorado. Naveen's in Cali. Well, now he's in Nashville, and then Tony's in fucking Ireland. So we had to write the modern way, which is like, one person comes up with ideas or comes up with a song or whatever, sends it to everybody else, and then we like, hey, this is really cool. Can we speed this riff up? Can we put this here? This one doesn't flow into this one. And then we make those changes. So it's a lot slower, which is also partially why it took so long, in addition to being locked down for 2-3 years, But so in essence, I think too, partially I've noticed too, is one thing that's different is that like the receptivity in the metal scene for highly technical shit is much wider. Like I feel like if we would have put Demonocracy out in today's metal world, that it would have done a lot better than it did. I mean, it did like, I want to say 98 or something out of the top 200 Billboard. So it wasn't like horrible, but compared to other stuff at that time, it was just too much for people. Super dense and that kind of stuff. So now I think that's kind of the difference is like the more like techier shit that we have on here, the receptivity level is very high for it. So if anything, it's like kind of a cool thing how much time has passed, as far as that side of the music thing is concerned.
Oh yeah, like you've had like to be fair though, I think it's because we've had so many bands come out and like really blow the roof off of what you could do technically. Like Archspire, like they fucking absolutely. I think they did a lot of work for that sort of market.
Sure.
Like everyone, I feel like a lot of people got into realizing like that from Archspire, or I can't think of many other bands just
Sure.
off the top of my head, but they're the first ones that come to my mind when I think of
Yeah.
like people that got me into that stuff.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, because they're a Dave Otero band, or, many bands that Dave has under his productive wing. And it's like with the Fall of Carnage back then, even, I mean, we were always, that was kind of I think a hard thing was like the tech stuff, just especially if it's odd meter. It's so difficult to get it to land live with people that aren't used to it. And I think that just like, I don't know, maybe with like just specialization, the internet, subreddits, et cetera, that the environment grew to where people are open to hearing stuff that's not in 4/4 or that has like, a lot of technicality to it. And so, because like Otero's been putting out that type of stuff forever. I mean, like Cephalic Carnage started in 92, which is crazy because I was in third grade. And the stuff that they have from back then, I mean, even, the conforming to abnormality stuff and like the Kill for Weed demos and stuff, it's super crazy technical stuff. But I think it's like what grabbed people is this, the slammy heavy shit. It's like you give a dog a bone. You know what I mean? It's like if it's tech all the time and it's super dense, it's difficult to chew through that whole steak in one meal. And so I feel like that maybe is kind of part of it is people are just getting better and better at like honing um, the craft of creating tech songs or
Mm.
using that, highly technical elements, but still being songs,
Yeah.
like not just being like a giant riff salad. Um, so yeah, so I think that's kind of part of it for us is um, that's where our focus really shifted even away from Demonocracy into Sun Eater and Moon Healer is that, we really wanted to have some of the more like ancestral structures, less so on Moon Healer, but Sun Eater, we were like, let's pull back on like half these riffs. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's kind of my overview of tech, I guess, in today's scene.
All right.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. One thing as well I wanted to ask you, like with being a bass player for, such a variety of different bands, obviously you play bass in Havok as well. And just I mean looking at your bio on Instagram, there's so many bands just stacked up in there.
Yeah,
Um,
it's getting
and
a
they're
little,
all
it's getting a little long.
oh yeah, well they're all so varying in styles. So like when you've gone through the writing process for one band, how do you sort of switch your brain back into, or just switch your brain into just writing for a band that's just completely different sound wise?
Right. Yeah, it's a good question. It's kind of one of those things where I have to, like, this last year was crazy, right? Because it was like I was off doing stuff with King, which is um, sort of like a stoner, heavy stoner, almost like Pantera meets Soundgarden type of a thing. Caius kind of influences Queen, maybe a little Queens of the Stone Age, that kind of stuff. And I have to sing in that band and not just like scream, but like sing and harmonize. And the singer's incredibly good. So going from that, and I'm like, okay, how long do I have to prepare for those shows or that recording, right? And it like because I'm in five, almost six bands, um, it would be like, oh, you have 3 days to get ready for that. So I'm just I'll just be cramming these different styles. And so it kind of like had to be developed in its own right to where I had to um just be able to switch. And ultimately what what you should be doing, what I should be doing is just once a week, just run through a set from each band to keep it fresh. But it's hard for me to do that when it's like all the work seems to be going into whatever I'm doing at the time. And so it's difficult to kind of just bounce back and forth between this stuff like immediately. So it's almost like I'm in like modes, So like when I'm doing the job for Cowboy writing, it's like I'm in that mode. And then it's probably pretty rare that I'll just switch to something else that day. I'll just like work on whatever I have to work on for that. Maybe I'll pick up, the King stuff or Havok or whatever. But it's kind of like seasons, like little brain blocks of time. And so, but now it's probably like after a full year of doing that with all the different bands, it was like literally like probably I don't know if it's like 10 songs per band, 12 songs per band times five. So it's like, 75 something songs that I had to have down this year. And constantly switching back between them, I think it calluses you up in a way, or like kind of like I'm used to it now. Like I could bump and be like, okay, let's play King song. Okay, play a Symbolic song. Okay, play this. Despite having to switch a bass every time because the tunings are all different, which is also fun to have to deal with.
That's cool though. Like I bet you've just, built up so much like different styles there. Like, and I don't know, maybe sometimes you can pull from another band into another band, if you like,
Yeah.
oh, I really liked the way it sounded in this. I wonder if I can bring this over to, I don't know, Job for a Cowboy, or bring this over to Havok. But yeah, man, I fucking I look like your bass line and like FPC and Havok, like that's one of the coolest bass lines of all time, in my
Ah,
opinion. I love that shit.
that's awesome. Thanks, man. That was something that I think I'm trying to remember exactly the writing process, but that was one of the first things that I had written for Havok. Hang 'em High was the very first thing that I wrote for Havok. That was um, just sat down at a computer and just like, all right, start at the beginning and let's just go all the way through this. And then I working on that FPC thing, and there was like already kind of like a basic structure for the song and everything, and it just kind of like there was already a slap line that was already there. I think it well, to kind of I forget the exact part, but I was just like, okay, I have to expand on this because like Dave will have ideas or there'll be existing ideas there from whoever, and I like sometimes, like I'm not so egotistical that I'll be like, hey, a super rad bass line is a super rad bass line, and if somebody else wrote it, that's cool. But there is like always a little bit of a drive to be like, I gotta put my signature on it a little bit. I gotta twist it just a little bit, or a lot of bit, And so I'll take stuff and just be like, just try to push it, make it evolve a little bit more. So like, yeah, just adding the tap part, and then like, oh, okay. But if I double that tap part and bring it an octave up too, So a lot of experimentation and that kind of stuff. And you're right, yeah, it is getting kind of cooler now to where like, if you get known for having a particular sound or style, that it kind of ends up being like I'll always just take stuff from whatever bass players that I'm influenced by or just friends or whoever, even some of my students, my bass students will come up with shit that I'm like, wow, that's fucking sweet. Like never seen that before. And I'll take it. And just like every technique belongs to every person. So you just take it and sort of evolve it or merge it into your overall sphere of playing, like your musical voice. And I think as you start to develop that and hone it, that you get known for being able to put that stuff in almost any genre. So like I can slap and do double thumb in Havok. I can do it in Job. I can do it in Symbolic Carnage. And the way that I choose to do it, or I'm forced to do it so that it doesn't sound like, hokey rap metal slap bass, kind of like creates your signature sound or whatever, you know what I mean? But it's fun. I love having all the different outlets, man. I think all of us humans need that variety. I think it's what we crave. It's like security is always number one, right? We think security is number one. I want to have a stable income. I want to have a roof over my head. I want to, have things not change. I need to know I'm going to be okay. But I think since we're so good at getting that done as a whole, that really what we crave more than anything is variety, uncertainty,
Absolutely.
something new, and I think that's why I love like having all these different bands as a giant. That's so much freaking work, but it's really fulfilling, and that you get all these different types of expression. It's like as soon as you're like, I would imagine playing in the same band 9 months out of the year, playing the same songs. I think I would get fucking bored,
Yeah. I mean, bands
I
do,
mean,
don't they? Like, bands will like have like they say they're the most popular song and they'll just get sick of playing it because like, especially bands that have been around since the 80s, they've had to play that shit like every night for what, how many years?
oh yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think that you can try. It's a testament to like being in the moment though, right? Because it's like, yeah, it's your 100,000th time playing that song, but there's a buttload of people in that audience that have never seen you before, and they've been waiting their whole lives to hear that song live.
Very true.
And for you to cheap out and their experience because you're tired of doing it, it's
Mm.
kind of like that's where you kind of have to be it's like the dancing, monkey with the cymbals, but you can make it not that though, it's like if
Mm.
if you really focus on the present moment and try to like, I don't know, experience it from a different way or that's why I'll mod stuff out a little bit live too. I'll be like, I may never play things exactly the same way twice, you know.
Mm. Oh yeah, I can't remember who said this, but someone said that when you hear like a song, you're hearing like basically an unfinished thing. Do you know what I mean? Like to that musician, it's never finished. So like a lot of people whilst playing live will go like drummers or like vocalists or anyone will just be like, "Why have we just like added just this bit for this live show?" And I
Oh, of
think that's
course.
that's what makes it so cool when you see a band live because like they played it differently, but it was so
Yeah.
much better. Like,
Yeah. I mean, I always love it when there's a strong separation between the live and the record. I mean, we love seeing bands nail the record. That is a very cool thing to see. And you're like, wow, but um, adding any type of improvisational element to something or
mm,
something different. It goes back to the variety thing. And that it's special to be like, I saw this live. And live, they do it different. They do this. And now you have a little connection with that band because like somebody might be playing that song and you're like, oh, have you heard it live? It's like it gives you a little, one up on your on your buddy. But I think it just goes back to the variety thing too, man. And there's another thing too that I think what you said is very true, and that happens with this record too, which is like we had 10 years to write this record, almost, right? I mean, a year of it was waiting for vinyl to get pressed, basically. But you would think that we would have gotten everything we wanted done, and every little change, everything should be exactly how we want it to be. And I know now that that doesn't happen. It doesn't matter how much time you have. A record is never done. It's never finished. It's just turned in, and that's kind of like a strong reality that I've found without having the pressure of a label to push you to be like, hey, records do, if we would have been following the regular 2-year thing, Moon Healer should have come out in 2016. What would that record have sounded like if we had to come out with it in 2016? It probably would not be what we have, because there's years and years of refinement in those songs that you normally don't have the luxury of having the time to do that when you're a full-time touring band. You'd be like, hey, we got 3 months before we got to hit the road again. We need the album to hit the road again. It's this big intertwined thing. So this kind of was a really cool experience to get to make, to try to make something as perfect as you can. And then there's the lesson in it, is that it never is done. You could always go back and add something, tweak something. Hey, maybe this should have been a little bit. There's little things on the record I'll hear that I'm like, we didn't get, that was supposed to get fixed,
Oh yeah.
No,
There's
totally.
like I've been writing with one of my bands like ages. And I always like go back to like one of the first practices, or like one of the first like times we've been like writing together going, that riff would have been better if you did that. It just fucking pops in your head and you're there like, shit, it's too late now. So yeah, I can completely get you there.
100%, man.
Yeah, totally. Well, like I said, Moon Hill was definitely worth the wait for sure.
Cheers,
I was really
man.
interested by the actual lyrical themes of the whole thing and the concepts of it. I read that it's about like, psychedelic experiences gone wrong, people trying to be their own shaman and like, trying to take things into their own hands, and it goes wrong. Like what influenced that specifically? Was it like some experience that's quite personal to you guys, or is it just something that you found was quite interesting that you see? Because it's quite a recent thing, I would say. A lot of people are doing that now.
Sure.
How did that come about?
Well, so during the Mayhem Fest of 2013, which is our last tour, which is fucking mental because that was 11 years ago. But we had kind of reached a point where, I don't want to say burnout, but before that tour, we were kind of like, the energy wasn't the highest in the band. We were doing a lot of tours that were like, okay, but not like the old school Fire, because I think people were not receptive to the tech that we were putting out at the time. It was like, it just didn't quite have a home with a larger audience. And so when we got the Mayhem tour, it really, really reinvigorated us. I mean, we were, we had an amazing slot and we were crushing it every day. Merch was just killing it. You're on tour with all your heroes. Finally tour with Mastodon. I'd always wanted to do that. So it was kind of a really inspiring environment. And despite Charn deciding that he was not going to do the record with us, that he wanted to move on to other stuff, we had this kind of concept that had been kind of floating around as almost a goof. And something about just that tour, we were just like, you know what, fuck everything else. Let's make that record. Let's make that fucking record. And it's loosely based off of a close personal friend of the band, who has this insane life trajectory that, a lot of the things on, like all of the songs on Sun Eater are basically like something that person thought or explained to us. And so we would go into, so it was really more like third person, even though like the
Okay.
lyrics are first person on that. The perspective is like writing about first person from the third person, if that makes any sense. And then when we knew after Sun Eater was out that we for sure wanted to put a sequel out to it, that we were not just doing another record, but we were like, we got to continue that story. And so the story, we wanted to really evolve it and push the boundaries of where would that character go, and if they were to continue down that path. And so this time around, it was like first person. Like Johnny really tried to put himself in the head of this friend and try to understand things as they saw them instead of like, perceptually. So as a result, this is actually less, I guess there's less ruination, not the album, but the character in this one, it's like the sun element has this sort of just, although it's creative, but this like sort of destructive element to it, just getting burned by the sun, and seeing it from that third person perspective, kind of that was, his interpretation of it. And then this time around, digging into some of those deeper archetypes that like there was a lot of people who have had these experience with these entheogens or hallucinogens that there's this like healing element to the moon, from even like a spiritual perspective. And so it's a first person version of the continuation of that character and what they went through via sort of, being their own shamans, even like pseudo alchemists, like making their own brew. But you know what? There's something where it's like and I love the way that Johnny writes, where it's not so pin the tail on the donkey with your headphone off or your blindfold off, where it's like all the answers are there for you. It's very transparent. This is what the song's about. This is what happens to the character. It's very open to interpretation.
Mm.
It's opaque, and I love that. So that it's not necessarily like, even if this character died in Moon Healer, that it's not necessarily bad. Like we can't really, it touches on that sort of unknown side of, what happens to our consciousness when we die, or when we're in these incredible, vast, like insane hallucinogenic realms. I mean, it's difficult to say whether they aren't there or not, like we know so little of, like our senses are tuned, approximately commensurate with, such a small percentage of the available light, the energy that we know exists in the room right fucking now. We're only tuned to 5% of what's going on. So who's to say that, when you imbibe, dimethyltryptamine or any of these things and you're entering these realms, that they aren't really there, sort of like schizophrenics, there's a lot of, hypothesis that like, I mean, even like if your eyes are dilating, right? It just this, is it letting more light in? Is it opening up your senses? So I kind of like that about this book, but it's also, there's a little bit of cautionary in it as well. Is to be like, at what cost does it do you reach enlightenment? To reach enlightenment, do you throw your entire physical life on Earth? Do you have to throw it away? So it's really kind of open into those all those different concepts, and yeah, I'm just excited to see what we do, because we're already writing another record. It's not going to be 10 years this time, and I think that's going to be the question, though, is like, is this story complete? So yin and yang, yin yang's pretty complete. The sun, the moon, like, is this journey over for this character, or does it continue on for the third one? So I think that's going to be kind of interesting, but the stuff is fascinating, dude. I mean, I've always been into this type of material, and like the video that I did with Kyle, my buddy Kyle, I acted in those first 2 videos, and the books that were all around the character in the very beginning, and his sort of like, you know, uh, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, like craze, red yarn going everywhere thing. Um, I only had to buy like one of those books, one or two of those books. All the rest of those books were mine. So I'm very familiar with the material, and it's fucking fascinating to me, you know.
Oh yeah, I've always found that stuff really interesting as well.
Yeah,
Like
same here.
I like reading about like the shared experiences people have had. Like when it's
Yeah,
everyone's like, oh, not everyone has the same fit like trip, not everyone has it. But then like you read like people's accounts, like there's a lot of shit that's actually adding up to be the same.
Yeah, it's
right.
just like
There's
DMT
this
and stuff.
described some like in a different way. But yeah, like going, maybe there's something more to this because how the fuck did some guy that's had the completely different life experience see that same fucking weird ass dragon thing? Do you know what I mean? Like,
Exactly. Yeah.
it's just like it's really interesting.
Yeah. I mean, that's like Rick Strassman, the book's DMT, the spirit molecule. And that was really what kind of blew him away was the commonality, the archetypes that kept repeating themselves again and again and again. And then, you can get into the Carl Jung stuff, the collective unconscious, and then I would tie that into the quantum entanglement, that um, the stuff that really kind of tripped Einstein out because it was spooky action at a distance that once two electrons are entangled into a system together, they remain entangled forever and have instantaneous communication across any distance at the speed of light, or it's instantaneously faster than the speed of light. So you could take two electrons and split them, and we've done this now. They've repeated this experiment a bunch, and like as far as we know, it could be across the known universe. That you affect the spin of one electron that was entangled with another one, and instantaneously measuring that other electron, the instant the first one has its spin shifted, the other one reacts inverse. And so then you think about, well, if everything in the known universe was connected or basically compacted into an infinitely dense single point, then all matter and space is entangled. And so then it's like, oh, okay, that makes things a little easier to postulate how there's the collective unconscious, how there's archetypes that fit, that like we're all connected to, and maybe there's something to be said about those particular substances putting us into a more receptive mind state towards that connection that is sort of at a subatomic level.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, because like I used to get really conspiracy theorists with it because like I remember just reading something. It was like an explanation of like DMT. It's like, well, look, it's just your body like stopping you from being traumatized from dying because it's a terrifying thought. So
Right.
but I'm there like, yeah, but like surely it like release it to be calm, not
Right.
trip your fucking balls off. Do you know what I mean? Like, do you
Right.
know what I mean? Like, I was like, there's got to be something else to it. Like,
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's just too complicated I think there's something that was really kind of interesting because Johnny and I would kind of go back and forth back when we were touring, 10-ish years ago. And he was real into Sam Harris and Dawkins and all the kind of, like hardline scientific reductionist materialists. The universe is 1,000% random. There is no organization to any of it, and evolution happens via random mutations that just so happen to benefit that organism to survive better in the environment and then are passed down. And I was kind of always playing devil's advocate, like, what about fractals? um, why is this self-similar pattern repeat itself no matter what the scale is in this incredibly vast universe or multiverse, that the golden spiral that galaxies adhere to, or even superclusters, that the human fetus when it grows in the womb is the same, or to the conch of a seashell, to the pattern that trees grow leaves in so they get the maximum dispersion to get the most amount of sunlight. Like this pattern repeats itself throughout all of existence and all space and matter. So it's a little hard for me to just, at least to say for sure, there's nothing. There's no, organizational structure. There's no design. It's just total random. I think it's naive to think that you can answer with 100% certainty either way. And that was kind of cool because I think Johnny, post having kids, has sort of softened up on that a bit and sort of come to that realization that like, you can't really know. It's pretty arrogant to say like, no, we know for sure. There is no this, like you can't know. And especially, I love to take like the most hardcore, scientific materialist, foundational, hardline atheist scientist and have them, smoke 3 grams of DMT, and be like, all right, anything? Not, maybe not. And they might be like, nope. But I think it'd be a fun experiment.
I think, I agree. I think like, nobody can pinpoint and say exactly this is like, what life is or what this is, because truly a lot of things are a theory. And I think as well, like I looked into, I remember looking into like the simulation theory, and at first of all, I sort of got me a lot of shit. And like I like watched more about it and just like heard people talk about it. And there's like big scientists like Neil deGrasse Tyson be like, oh, I actually do think that's a simulation. Elon Musk says, I think it could be a simulation. And like certain everything's like down to a curve, like us, it's down to a banana. Some of the DNA is the same. Like it's weird things like that I just never thought about before. But the more you look into it, it's like super interesting. Like anything could be plausible and everything's a theory. And I think I don't know. I don't know how people like don't find it interesting to venture into it and like learn more about it, because there's so many interesting theories out there.
Oh, I totally agree. The multiverse stuff, but really the simulation hypothesis, real tough to refute that one. Some of the most brilliant minds on the planet are like, that's probably the most likely thing,
Yeah.
And so then it's like, that opens up every conspiracy theory or every, whatever. To me, it's like, if it's all code, then yeah, the fucking moon is fake, everything's fake. It's all zeros and ones. Any hypothetical theory about what it just opens all that up to me, that I'm like, oh well, if it's all code, it's a video game in which you can program anything, and to the
it's fucking Sims, bro.
Yeah, and to the inhabitants of that video game, yeah, anything is real. It's the Matrix. It's like any electrical stimuli that you put into their senses that they perceive is real. So I think that's pretty fascinating stuff. There's one book, one of the MIT guys wrote a book. I think it's called The Simulation Hypothesis, and I'm about a fifth of the way through that book, and it's the way they explain, how it makes the most sense that our reality is a simulation, is kind of mind blowing. They're like, this is how we build, simulated worlds. And
need to get some book recommendations from you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I have a bunch.
Oh yeah, like I can't remember. I can't remember who said it, but I was reading, and it was like, it's like when you break it down, it's like the most like binary thing. Like the probability of this being a simulation is more likely of a probability than this just happening on its own.
Oh yeah.
Like he went, I can't remember who it was that I was reading, but it was like nah, like genuinely the probability of this just being something that's made up to this just happening by chance
Right.
somewhere, like it's that's the most likely option. Like,
Right. That's crazy for like, even for like religion then,
Yeah.
it's like, if you were able to say like, okay, that's intelligent design, right? Like the simulation, somebody programmed this, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's an old, immortal guy in the sky with a white beard and a cane, smiting
Yeah.
people. It could be a higher, I mean, think of like Men in Black, right? Did you ever see like the OG Men in Black where like
Mhm.
Orion's
Yeah,
belt right? And at the end, it's just a marble that, and the aliens are just playing marbles with these, these much larger aliens, So it's like our concept of scale is kind of crazy, like microbes live in their own universe. Do they think about the fact? Are they, is there any cognizance to their sentience that they're an infinitesimally small part of a much, much, much larger being?
Mhm.
I mean, there's not really any way that we can prove that that's not us, or that our entire universe isn't a, a fucking Sims game on a much larger human beings, the size of the universe, and they have
Yeah.
very large computers.
Yeah,
Right.
God could not be like a white beard guy with a cane. It might just be some software developer in a chair covered in Doritos dust. You know what I mean? You
Yeah.
just never know.
Yeah, I
That's like
mean, God could eat Doritos?
Yeah.
no, that's Brad actually touched up a point that I always thought really funny about it. Like in my head, like I always like to imagine it's like a simulation made like probably just made by like an otherworldly being that's just like so much smarter than us, right? But in their culture, they're the nerds. Like,
Right.
where it's
Yeah.
like, oh, you're fucking with Earth, you fucking nerd. Like, you know what I mean? Because like,
Yeah,
it's to them, they're the software developer. Where
that's
they're like,
brilliant. Yeah, the nerds of the multiverse.
yeah, like it's just the idea of it just makes me laugh. Where he's like in their world, they're like, yeah, it's like, look at him, fucking on his computer all day. He's like, why
Yeah,
are you
like
going to get some sun?
come
Like,
come
shit like
come play
that.
come play space football.
Yeah, just the idea of it just makes me chuckle.
Yeah,
One
no,
thing I
that's
wanted to one thing I wanted to bring up with Moon Healer, is the main thing that stood out to me when I first saw it without listening to it. Obviously, was the art. Looks exactly how the album sounds.
yeah,
It still keeps that brutal touch, so you know it's a metal album.
sure.
Um, is the art something that, as a band, you've got a lot of control over, or is it like just a simple case of like, no, we just know an artist that just understands our vision and they run with it?
We were super involved with it. Johnny really laid out almost exactly what he wanted and used and gave Tony Cole, the artist, examples of his own work. Like, hey, we love, we dug through all Tony's work and we're like, dude, this, we would like this, and then this part, we want to be like this. And then so we were super involved in it. And just kind of knew that like stylistically he would get what we were talking about, especially if we give him examples of his own work. And it's one of those things where this was kind of crazy because you said like it sounds like the music sounds like the cover. That's kind of crazy because Johnny was so ahead. I guess we kind of thought that the record would be out much sooner than it was. So we had the finished art, I want to say in 2020, like
Oh, wow.
before we went to record, we had the finished art. And that so rarely happens. And so I remember having the art and like looking at it during the recording process and being like the art was influencing the music, because it's like, oh, you look at the art and then like, and we're coming up with this part, you're like, does this sound like that? So it was kind of um inextricably linked, because normally it's like, oh, finish the album, then you're waiting on album art. That's kind of the standard, right? So the art has to match the music, but almost in this case, it was like the music needed to match the art.
Yeah, it's interesting that because, like you said, most bands, what you'd imagine would be that, the artwork does come after, and you kind of base the artwork on how the music sounds. But it sounds like, the concept came first, then the art, and then the music was like coming along after that. So it makes
Yeah,
sense, like how like it does take you on a journey, and when you look at the artwork, it feels like you're being transported to it through the music. So,
yeah,
super,
yeah.
super cool, man. Super cool.
Thank you. I really appreciate it, man. Yeah, we're really proud of it. It was the most work. I keep saying that about everything that I do. I'm just like, no, this is for sure the most work I've ever put into anything. And then it's like, oh yeah, here's the next thing you're gonna try to do. And but yeah, but collaboratively, the team that it took to put this together and the time and the obstacles that we had, we're really, really grateful that it's out. I've said this 100 times, but there was 100 times throughout the last 8 years that I didn't think this record was ever going to see the light of day. It was like, it's going to get, you just got so used to getting the phone calls with Johnny and being like, oh, yeah, sorry, we're going to have to push it back. We're going to have to push it back. Because I remember talking about, I was at NAMM 2016 talking about that record we were going to try to get out that year. Because like most of the songs, I think at that point we had 6 to 8 songs, and I was like, oh, it's going to happen. We're all going to go to Florida and just get it done. And then it was like, 17, 18, 19, 20, and the lockdowns, 21, 22. Then even in January of 23, the record was finished recording. We were just about done with the mixing process and getting the mastering done. And we turned it in like sometime in February, and we're like, cool, fucking 2023, 9 years. We're gonna put this out right when we play that Blue Ridge Rock Fest. And then the label was like, nah. Now that you've turned it in, it's February 24, and we were like, fuck. But it makes it 10 years. 2014 for Sun Eater, 10 years for Moon Healer 2024. So I'm cool with the round 10 number, but we're gonna try to not make it be 10 again.
Yeah, well, it's definitely worth the wait. Also, I know that you've launched your Sins bass as well.
Yeah.
Like obviously, definitely a big year for you. So, how did that come about? Was that like a fun process, like making your own bass and things like that?
Yeah, for sure. So I went down to while we were recording Moon Healer, while I was doing bass, we were kind of like, hey, don't post anything. We're trying to smack people in the face with the record. So we didn't want to do the big long hype build-up thing. And then Sukov was like, fuck that. And he posted a picture of us, bass is done, And so Ermin from Submission Audio contacted Jason and was like, hey, I see, would Nick be interested in doing a virtual instrument? And that was back when I was recording with Dave Otero in I guess that was 22 or 20. I can't fucking remember anymore. But anyways, I was recording with Otero and we were writing lines together, and he was taking some of my little stuff, like the little flickety, double thumb, those things, and he had them all chopped up. And he's like, what about something like this? And he just started building this crazy ass line out that way. And he's like, man, you should think about doing a bass library. He's like, because sounds awesome and it's really cool and it's super creative. And he kind of lightly mentioned Ermin, and then later go and do the JPAC record, and then Ermin hits up Jason about it. He puts me in contact with him, and so it was like, okay, go to Australia and play every single whole note or every single note on your bass. You play whole notes until the note decays, like a lot of times. So it was like
That's how impressed I imagine them.
Yeah, that was like 2+ weeks of doing down, down for like 2 fucking weeks. It was
Holy shit.
Insanely tedious. And like, oh, that was fingerstyle. Now you need 2-1. Okay, now you need 1-2. Now you need thumb down. Now you need thumb through, thumb up, every single fret. Then a slide from first fret to second fret, second to third, third to fourth. You're sampling the entire sound of the bass. And then we knew that we were going to put it out in conjunction with the record. So that was another thing too, where once the record got pushed back, because Shin's bass was supposed to come out in August when we did the Blue Ridge Fest in conjunction with the record. Once the record got pushed back, Submission was like, it's got to drop with the record. So that pushed it back, but it gave us more time. The same thing as the record. It gave us much more time to refine it, and I was able to like go through and help design the user interface. So that was so cool. They're like, this is a signature plugin. So what do you want? You get to design it. And so I used a bunch of different tools to like come up with my idea for the 2 different tone pages and the little ram's head and the tone itself, the interface, the module, everything was like, it was a really fun process, man. And it was crazy to drop it last week and to just hear all these guitarists writing the craziest shit with it. And it really made me be like, oh man, I should learn what these guys programmed, because here's something where people are going to be like, oh, you're taking jobs away from a bass player and you're being, it's the whole kind of AI takeover thing. You need real, and I'm like, here it is influencing me to want to get better on my real bass. That it's a tool, just like any other technology. The AI can be incredibly helpful for us and already is. Can also be the end of us too. I mean, Skynet, right? So it's about how the tool gets used and maybe, putting in safeguards or just like being like, hey, should you use it to replace a bass player if you can use a real bass player? Probably not, but there are cases where, one of the guys was like, this is bullshit. I saw in the comments, he was like, this is bullshit, just get a real bass player. And this guy's like, I can't remember if it was both or just one, but he's like, I don't have arms, but I can write with so like I can compose bass lines with this now, having a physical limitation that doesn't allow me to actually be able to play bass, and I want to write and compose it. So I was like, oh, that's really cool. It's just kind of perspective, shifting. But excited to hear more what people do with it, and also to write myself with it, because that's the thing is like writing. After I got 10 something records out now, it's like I really don't want to repeat myself. That's one of the things I'm really trying not to do, and that gets harder and harder and harder with each successive release. And so you constantly have to try to evolve and develop new techniques and new phrasings and just try to push yourself so that you're not just like, oh, here's this basic line that I used a billion times. And so a lot of times with players, it's like we get stuck in muscle memory. I'm playing with the same shapes. That's why I sound the same all the damn time. So you need to be like, think of it in your head first, or get on a different instrument that you don't have that same muscle memory, and that will help you write and come up with new phrasing. And then go back and learn that on your bass, and now you're doing something new. And so I'm really looking forward to being able to do that with this, is to like, with a new JFAC, to be like, try to, write a song with Shin's bass first. Because you could do it on a plane to Europe or something, and get off the plane and be like, dude, I wrote this sick bass line, check it out. And it's actually me playing it, if you think about it. But just excited to try to see, to like push the boundaries. Like, you guys are probably a little young for that game, but there's a game called Tony Hawk 2.
The Pro Skater. I'll tell you that too,
yeah. Yeah. And when that came out, it, not just for skating, but for snowboarding too, it really blew everybody's mind open, because you could do shit in that game. It was so realistic, and you could do shit in that game, impossible shit, right? At that people thought was impossible at the time, but it opened people's minds up to what was, maybe I could do that, and then people start trying it and then achieving it. And so again, like, here's the technology, like, helping us push ourselves further than we would have been able to without that sort of like, I guess, just seeing what's possible via a simulation,
Oh yeah, and I think as well, like on the point of like people saying, oh well, just get an actual bassist. Like, you might live in an area where it's literally impossible to find a bassist. So like,
Sure.
because like I've been in bands like for fucking years. Number one member of the band, it's the hardest to find someone that's either good, dependable, or reliable. Weirdly, is bass, specifically just in that area. I imagine like if you live somewhere else, it might be like, oh, here it's like fucking drummers. You can never find a drummer. But like,
Right.
I've met in total, I think 4 bassists, and
Yeah.
every time it's just not been a good fit. And it's like,
Yeah.
fuck, where are they? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I've got enough
Yeah.
guitarists to fill out an orchestra.
Yeah. Well, and
Like,
well, and it's like it's I think it's partially because like it's been sort of relegated to an unglamorous position in the band. Like, it wasn't cool to, I mean, the bass players are usually the cool dudes or whatever, but it's not the get all the attention instrument. Hasn't been, and so I think that that's kind of starting to change, which is cool, because it's such a unique timbre to do melodies and like central motifs and like lead lines on that instrument. It hasn't been used, at least in metal, anywhere near how much people have explored on the guitar. So I feel like it's really cool that that's sort of changing, and you're seeing, bands like, uh, Omnipresent Creation, or no, what was it? Oh man, it's escaping me. But Rivers of Nile is great, and Archspire, Jared's doing stuff. Like, there's so many incredible bassists now that are like, you know, hey, we're here too, and we can contribute musically. And so I think that that's starting to change, and hopefully that continues to go that way, because I think it just adds a whole nother dimension to a band. You know,
I agree.
and Justice for Jason. You know, have you ever heard where I don't think they had the actual tracks, but somebody re-recorded all the bass and put it to Justice, and it's a totally different record. You know, and just think about like how different the JFAC songs sound when there's not bass on them. You know, it's like the bass really has so much control over the feel of what happens with stuff when you allow it, you know. So
No,
Oh yeah.
it's a good time to be a bassist, I think.
Oh yeah. When you
completely agree
completely
with you.
cut bass from a track, like it doesn't matter how good your guitars sound on their own. You can tell there's no bass. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's
Yeah,
just like your brain just goes, there's something just not quite right, but I don't know what's
yeah,
not right about it.
yeah,
Like, you just know instantly.
yeah. I mean, even Animals as Leaders puts bass on, you know, has always had a version of bass on the first record. I think it was they just took the lowest string on the eighth string guitar and just like subbed it down, you know, and did little simple things with it, but then it needs it, you know. And then they even, I don't know if they did it on what was it? The Madness of Many, I think. Uh the most recent one, but I know live they use submission bass. They use like I think they were using Umansky bass. Jacob from Intervals is submission plugin. So yeah, it's like, you know, it's one of those things where even if the band is super focused on, you know, two virtuoso guitar players and we don't have a bass player, there's still bass, you know, they're still putting bass in using tracks or something to fill out that low end. Bass is what makes people move, you know, go to a
Sure.
dance club and unplug the subs, you
Oh
know,
yeah. Oh
and
yeah.
watch people stop fucking dancing, you know?
Oh yeah. Like I think the coolest way of getting around not having a bass player I heard was Sanguisuga Bog. I'm pretty
Ah,
sure the way they get around it. And I think I saw this in Hard Law. I could be misremembering it, but they get around it by they have both the guitarists go into a bass amp, and then all the distortion from the guitar is done through
ah,
pedals. So like
ah.
basically for two guitarists, it sounds like you've got two basses also in time, perfectly tuned into that guitar, which I thought that's a fucking genius way of getting around that.
Yeah, I had my first band before I joined Spala Carnage is called Ain Matter, and it's two basses, drums, and vocals, no regular guitars. And we would do sort of the inverse of that, is we would plug our basses into A/B pedals, the A side going to bass amps, the B side going to Mesa Boogie dual Rex and guitar full stacks. And then, you know, we could either like, oh, I'm just on the guitar cab for this part, he's on the bass, we're both on the guitar part, whatever. But then when we kick in for choruses, it's all four amps, you know, two bass amps, two guitar amps, and just fucking massive sounding, you know. I remember even Meshuggah, before they did the eight strings, they had talked about just doing a record with just two basses. Um, and then they were like, oh, but then we couldn't play any of our old songs live and we'd have split the sound up too much. So they were like, let's get eight string guitars, you know. Um, but yeah, it's cool to see. I like innovation. I like seeing stuff like that, you know. I think it'd be cool though to be like, but melodically, it's like Dave with Havok has always laid this out where he's like, you know, he loves classical music as a lot of us do. And he's like, they have like 60 sometimes, you know, or more different voices, melodic, you know, harmonic capabilities. Um, and then like you look at your standard rock format band, two guitars and a bass, you only have three voices to try to say anything harmonically. And in most metal bands, it's been sort of traditional that the bass just is really like clicking a sub pedal on the guitar. It's not doing anything different. It's just matching the riff. In which case now you're down to just two voices, you know? And so what can be said, the complexity of the harmonic ideas is so limited when you literally are telling one guy, hey, just play what I play. Or actually, we don't even fucking need you, and I'm just gonna use a pedal, you know. So, but you know, everything's got its place. You know what I mean? Like sometimes it's a vibe and a feel, and people are like, I don't want the fucking bass. You know, there's a small little contingency um, uh, where you're gonna bum some people out. There's some people that are like, this one dude was like, oh man, this fucking bassist ruined job for Cowboy just like he ruined Cephalic Carnage. I don't want to fucking hear bass all over the fucking track, Like there's guys that they're not into that sound. But to each they peach, I guess,
No,
Right.
absolutely, yeah. So we got one last question for you.
Sure.
And if you were in a zombie apocalypse and you were trapped with only your bandmates and job for a cowboy, who would you be most reliant on, and who would you be least reliant on, and why?
In the band?
Yeah.
Man, I think I probably would maybe go with Tony. Um, just because he's so fucking strong and he's a doctor as well.
That's very handy, to be fair.
Right? So I'm like,
that's probably the most handy
That's probably
thing you could-
that's the most handy one we've had so far, to be honest. You know what I mean?
super fucking strong, like strongman competition strong, but super fucking brilliant. Johnny'd be really good too. I mean, Alice, I don't know, man. They're all really good, man. I think drummer wise, I'd probably be the least reliant on because we don't have a permanent drummer. So that makes sense,
Man, I mean, if you got a guy that's both the tank build and the medic build, I think he's sorted.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but Johnny's really smart too, and sort of a leader in some aspects for sure. I mean, when that kind of command presence that somebody has on stage, there's not a lot of guys that can. I mean, there are, but it takes a special kind of guy to like command an audience like that. So I guess it depends on like how many people are in the group. If it was like a bigger group, then I would say maybe Johnny. But a smaller group, maybe Tony. I don't know. I'll take them. I'll take them all with me.
Oh yeah,
We'll
man.
survive. We'll survive together.
Awesome stuff. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on, man. Like I said, Moon Healer, worth 10-year wait for sure. But it's an absolute
Thank you.
masterpiece, and I've been spinning it since it's come out. What happened?
I think you might have dropped out.
This is the man if I don't know what to do.
Is he?
Oh, he's coming back in.
All right.
Whoops.
Gotcha.
No worries. No worries. We were there. We were there. Like, huh?
Thank you. Thank you so much. You guys were at Red Hang, man. We had a really good time chopping it up with you, and that's always fun. I always try to like, I've done so much press for this record. It's like kind of insane. I mean, I don't know. I think I started in fucking January doing press. So it's a lot. And I love when it's just a conversation, it's just like a fucking hang. You know what I mean?
Right.
This could have been at a bar, over some beers. So that's one of more favorite types of styles of doing this stuff is where it's just like that. It's just kind of an open conversation. And obviously, questions are cool and structure's cool too, but just feels like a conversation. So thank you guys.
No worries, man. That's what we try to do the most, really. Like we don't like we always used to hate watching, like the super structured stuff.
Oh,
And we
yeah,
always
fine.
like, you know what? I feel like we could do it better by just having an actual conversation with them. So we always aim
Yeah.
at just like, fuck it, let's just treat it like a hangout rather than an interview.
Yeah, exactly. And it was better too. It ended up working out that it wasn't at 12 because like there's so much pressure, or well, 7 for you guys. There's so much like so many interviews I got to get through a day that I usually only have 30 minutes. And I feel like 30 minutes is tough to get. I feel like it's like it takes you 10, 15 to just kind of get into the real groove of stuff. So it ended up working out that the time was different because then like, yeah, this conversation would have been a lot shorter. We would not been able to go into nearly as much detail on shit as we did. So
Yeah, that was the
Right.
fun part. We like going on tangents, especially like, all the conversation about the psychedelic stuff and like,
yeah,
theories of life. We love doing that kind of stuff, like,
yeah,
just
fuck yeah.
chatting, shooting the shit. But yeah, thank you
Yep.
so much, man. It's been an absolute
Cheers,
pleasure.
man. Hell yeah. You
Yeah.
guys take it easy. And I'm guessing Scotland.
No. See, a lot of people think we're from Scotland. We've had
Liverpool?
Australia. No.
What?
Close. Just like a little bit like down and to the side.
We're from
Wait a
Leeds
second.
in
You guys.
Yorkshire.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
gotcha. You know where else it was like Liverpool to me had that kind of. It's like maybe in the R's, like it's like you almost roll your R's the way that Scottish do, and some of the inflection and the tone. It's interesting to be fun to like trace like the development of the accents from
Oh
like
yeah.
the centralized point, and then like these people are like fuck that fucking tribe, we're going over here, and then like start saying shit a little bit differently. And they found even that Antarctica, that scientists that have been down there for I think like 4 or 5 years have started to develop their own accent. So it
Fucking
happens
hell.
that
Oh wow.
it happens that fast.
Well, I did some reading because I really like how because in like the UK, even though we're only a tiny island, you can walk down the street and find someone with a different accent to you,
That's
probably in
very
the
true.
same city. So
Yeah,
like I looked into it, and the most common one, like to the original English accent, would either be like a northern accent or like very like toned down Scottish, and it's because
really.
yeah, the southern posh accent that everyone assumes that's how all British people
Do it.
sound.
Don't do it. Do it or don't do it.
Yeah, well, that is
Yeah.
that was like the common Londoner, but like the posh, like, oh hello sort of thing. That was
Ah.
actually a thing that essentially that it's like got its own name. It's from the royal family, and it was a way to uh, essentially just show that you was not a commoner. You was part of someone that was very high up and la di
Ah.
da, so that
Aha.
you wouldn't be confused with just someone on the street if you spoke like that. And it was like, oh, it's a sign of like your
Affluence.
hiatus, yeah, because you've had to be
So
educated to speak that way. Like,
so it was a voice. They did it on purpose. They were like an affectation, right?
yeah, so
You know.
then it became just a standard thing. So it's like it was to
Oh.
show I'm rich and I'm really important because someone's actually had to come and tell me how to do this. I
Right.
had to do this way and all that. So it was like so since then that's how it started, and then it just some areas you can tell when someone's from like a middle class or like a high class area in London if they've got that accent because it's like only
Ah.
you fuckers talk like that. Like, so
That's brilliant, man. That's awesome. Well, cool shit. We're right on, dudes. Thanks so much.
Yeah,
no
thank you,
worries, man.
man.
Thank you.
Hell of a pleasure talking to you guys, and I hope to see you with JFAC live sometime. Probably more likely you'll see me with Havok first, though, but we'll see.
Hell yeah, man. Bob, looking forward
Hopefully,
to
man.
that.
Hopefully.
Cheers. All right, homies.
All
Peace.
right. Thank you,
See
man.
you later, man.
Cheers.
Take care.
Later.